right, does anybody have any questions about anything? I know I just went over everything really quickly. Is there any questions at all about anything on your credit report? Does anybody in here use a credit monitoring website, such as Credit Karma, or pay for a credit monitoring? Yeah? Okay, good. So like I said, don't get tricked into thinking that's your credit score, okay? Your FICO score is completely different, and like I said, you have hundreds of FICO scores. You have 49 different FICO scores alone. 49. They have a mortgage industry FICO score. They have an auto industry FICO score. They have a generic FICO score. They have a score based on whether you'll respond to mailers. They have a score for everything. They have a bank score. If you've ever bounced a check, somebody tried to pull out funds, NSF, non-sufficient funds, that'll hurt your bank score, which doesn't necessarily matter for your consumer credit, but if you want to apply for mortgages or your business credit, it can have a big negative impact to have a bad bank score. So like I said, there's hundreds of different scores, and anytime there's false information, yep.
Why do you, say for instance, car loans, when you go and apply for an auto loan, all these banks, they all pull your credit, but all they look at is your score.
Yep.
None of them pay any attention to what type of credit you have or your payment history or anything like that. They're just more focused just on the score. So like my daughter, for instance, she's 19, she has one credit card that she just opened, and that's it. Her credit score is 790. She got approved, and
Right.
they didn't even look at her credit history.
Well, they do. When they pull your credit score, all these factors that I just went over, that's factored in. That's all the math, it's the algorithm that goes into it. So whoever's pulling the score doesn't have to be that smart. They can just read, okay, this is your score, this is what we got you approved for. The computer did it. They didn't sit there and calculate your credit score. They didn't go over it. The computer does it right away. So, and like I just said, so for those different types of scores, different things are weighed differently. So for an auto industry score, when you go to apply for an auto loan, they weigh heavily on previous auto payments. So if you never had one, yeah, you have a little bit worse score, but that's okay. So you said she's 19 and she has a 790?
19, she just opened a Discover card and a Kohl's card. She's had it for maybe 6 months. Her credit score is well over 700 and something.
Right.
And she got approved for a 4% loan by herself.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully she can afford those payments every month for the next 5 or 6 years.
Right.
That's the main thing. People will go, and when you go to a car dealership, and I've experienced it, and I've been with clients at the car dealership, not too often, I don't go with everybody, but I've gone, and they just want you to buy the brand new cars, okay? My friend, he wanted to buy a $10,000 car. Well, he ended up getting a brand new Toyota Camry. They talked him into it. They were saying, well, you can't get approved for this. It has to be a 2008 or newer with less than 100,000 miles. But then you have a $30,000 car loan that you're stuck with for 5 to 7 years, depending on how long you're. Do you know how much money you're going to be making next year? Do you know if you're going to have a kid next year? Do you know if you're going to lose your job next year? Do you know if you're going to get sick next year? Nobody knows these things. It's not smart to take on a huge loan like that. If you want to get a car, it's better just to get a used car. You can find one that's just at 99,000 miles just so you can get approved. But yeah, that's awesome. She has over 700. So that's a good point. So she's had it for at least 6 months, because in order to generate a FICO credit score, you have to have credit for over 6 months. Okay? Most people don't realize that. They say, all right, well, that's if you've had no credit in the past. Like she had no credit. She was 19. She just opened up those accounts this year or whatever for 6 months. Now she had a great credit score. She never missed a payment, used them, paid them off, used them, paid them off. Well, her trend for the past 6 months has been great. So they gave her a great score. And then they gave her a great interest rate. So hopefully she can continue to make those payments. And right. Well, for federal student loans, they pretty much approve anybody for the certain amount per year. But then if you need more, which most colleges you do, then you have to get private student loans or a Parent Plus loan or a cosigner, which is very dangerous to cosign for people, even your kids, because if they don't pay for the debt, then you have to. And if you don't pay for it, it destroys your credit and their credit. or your brother, or your cousin, or your friend. Who I've seen tons and tons of times. People call me, oh, I have 4 car loans. Well, only one one's mine, but I got one for my buddy, and I got one for them. Well, that was your decision. You had good enough credit then, now you don't. And now you can't buy a home because of their bad mistakes. So whenever you're going to co-sign for something, I'm not saying don't do it, okay? You need to be careful. You need to be very careful. Okay, maybe if it's like a $3,000 loan, you can take care of it yourself. Whenever you're going to co-sign, you need to make sure you can pay for it yourself because you can't rely on them because you never know what's going to happen. But is there any other questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
How long do the inquiries stay on your?
Good question. So it said how long do inquiries remain on your credit report? For 2 years, they remain on your credit report, but they only matter for 1. After 12 months, doesn't have a negative impact. That 10% score doesn't affect it. So 2 years it remains, only affects your credit score for 1. So, very good question. And a lot of people call me and complain about inquiries. That's usually not the issue, okay? It's 10% of your credit score. There's other things you need to work on, like opening a credit card. Any other questions?